Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Dennis. Welcome to Patina Code. This is So You Want to Build an AD.
I'm cold right out, I'm done. Come on.
Hello again, everybody, and thank you for tuning in for this edition of So You Want to Build an AD, powered by LS Fabrication. And we are making some really good progress. Today's video is going to feature getting the cowl panel put on this truck. I'm also going to upload a video of how I completely got the cowling off. The previous video showing getting the cowls off was just kind of showing that that's what I was doing, but in the next video about dismantling the cowl section on these AD trucks, it's going to be a full-length video and how I went about getting the cowling off of the truck, so be on the lookout for that. But right now, let's get into this video. All right, so we have our cowling mocked up and we're about ready to go into doing the first set of spot welds. Now, we don't want to weld it completely solid because we might have to, shift it around, jostle it, tap on it here and there. So what you're going to want to do is drill a spot weld hole right here on the nose, right where the hinge bolts mount. And we're going to use this punch as an alignment tool to keep things kosher. You want to be careful not to round out your threads because you need them. So with the punch there, that kind of keeps things lined up. And you're going to want to put a clamp here to hold it on the end. This is where we're going to put the spot weld right here, close to the corner edge of this joining panel. That still will give us the ability to make the back shift around enough to get it to where we got it. We got it pretty well lined up. It looks really good. I'm excited to get this part of it done. So I'm going to strike up the welder and we're going to spot weld here. Then we're going to spot weld right up there on the A pillar, and that's going to hold it in place. Then what we have to do is finish lining everything up and then get the inner part of this cowl to be moved out. So we're going to have to remove these clamps, then re-clamp it again in order to draw this out and get it flush with the old piece of cowling here. So let's get started on some spot welds. So now with the panel spot welded, we can remove this clamp. We want to try and draw this portion out just a little bit to get it more flush with this. And then we will clamp down again right here so that we can spot weld this panel to here. But we want to draw this upper section out because right now it's just a little bit behind the original piece and we want it to be as flush as possible. Okay, now we're going to have a look at what we've got so far. There's one of the spot welds. We're going to put another one here. And we have one here. We're going to put another one there. Then we're going to do a series of spot welds. You see there's holes here. So we'll have a spot weld here, here. We'll have one here, here, and somewhere in there possibly. And then of course we'll have one here, 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 and here because this piece is up and under there. Then we have our spot weld here joining this there. What I want you to remember is that this part here does not go all the way up to that. The thing about this is, when you look at rat body, for example, my truck outside, you have this lip here. And now I'm not going to say there's no way to get that down. We could go on the inside and start pushing this out, which we're going to do. We're going to push it out just a little bit, but it does not lay super duper flush. There's this gapping naturally on these trucks. This overbite, this little lip here. Now you can do what you want to do to flush it out, but you get the beating and moving things, you're going to distort stuff. So the best thing to do is to clamp everything tight, do your spot welds, and then kind of manipulate it as you go. So now once we did this, I hurry up and put this clamp here, and it smashed it down. And then what I did was took the baby sledge and lightly tap this down to get it a little closer, get the clearance a little tighter, but it's not gonna be a super flush steel. And then for those of you guys who remember, there was a spot weld that would join these to keep them from flapping. Even though it had all the spot welds in it, you still had a weld going from this panel to this panel. And then again, it was like right here joining that one. Then in the front, you had one joining this to the skin, this skin back here. Now the important thing about this part up here is we'd have two of our little spot welds on it here. That's holding it in place. But what you're gonna have to do is take your clamp and draw this panel like this, because right now it's laying inward a little bit. It's away from this. We're also gonna have to drill a hole in here and spot weld this back to it once we get everything clamped back down. So just pay attention to what you're doing, because see, there's a gap in between there. And then there was a weld that was from here going down to here, and it was to keep these from flapping around. But you can weld it up however you like, but don't get overly concerned with, oh, it's not fitting flush, there's an overbite, there's a lip. Well, it's like that on the original trucks. But we are going to do what we need to do to get this pushed out, because you can see where we need to put the spot weld, that's away. So we're going to be clamping here to bring this panel up, and then that would bring these a little closer together. And then we're going to do the same thing here where we have this. We're just going to bring it out just a hair and then put a spot weld into it, but then weld it again like through there, just to keep everything tight. So we got some work to do. While this is cooling, I'm going to take a break, and then we'll come back and I'll finish welding everything up, and then we'll see what we got. Hear that? That's solid. That's tamped down. That's solid. So we just got to go behind here on the inside, and we're going to weld this panel to this panel by way of the inside. And then we'll clean all this up when it's time to do the rest of the body work. So now I want you to have a look at this. This is where there is still the lead fill. And you can see what happens. You know, welding, you got this panel joined in, but then the heat from welding will create the lead fill to melt, and it runs down. It looks like mercury. It's not something that you want to be doing. It's highly toxic, like this is lead. But you can see where it's poured out, and it's pouring, and it's been on the side, and then what you got on the ground is the splatters down there. I suggest that you scrub this back all the way back, because what's underneath it, it's just fill. It's like their version of Bondo for back then. But you will have the holes for where you can spot weld this panel back up into there. I'm going to go on the inside and weld from the inside out to join the panel, and then whatever runs out, it just runs out. And then of course we're going to come back behind this and we're going to flatten it out. We'll sand it all flat, and then you're going to have to run filler anyway between the seam to cover this up, because the trucks do have a fill here. There's no seam like it is up here in the front. So you're going to run some type of filler here anyway. What I'm going to do is get this panel finished welded from the inside, but then when it's all done and we get our door and everything mocked up, I'm going to get a piece of sheet metal and get the rest of this off of here, and then I'm just going to weld a piece of sheet metal across here to make it seam, because I don't want to put that much Bondo in there, because that's a lot, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to sand it down and then try to put a piece of sheet metal in there and just weld it across and then grind it. We are going to have to put some Bondo, but I prefer to just do like a smear coat if possible. So we'll see how that works out. But you guys remember me talking about the lead fill, and there it is. And you see what happens when you try to weld on it. You can weld to the other side of the metal, but it's not advisable. So that's what I'm gonna do, is just weld the panel from the inside, joining it, and get it solid, because it's on there good. And we're gonna finish our mission. I guess what you could say. So we're shaping up. We're looking pretty good, guys. That's it. All right. So now with that done, it looks like a mess. And it is a mess. But we can clean this off, grind it down, and then do what we need to do. Body working, adding some sheet metal here and there. Then of course, smear coating it once it's time to go into the whole prepping of the paint and primer and whatnot. So we have the cowl secured to the truck. It's hot. I hear it popping. It's like tick, tick, tick. So we're gonna let it cool down before we do anything else. And then after we're done putting the panel all the way in, because I'm confident that we have it lined up to where we need it to be, but we are going to release the bottom one, move it just a scotch, see what we got as far as that goes. And then we still need to join the panels here, spot weld, and then we need to spot weld this in, spot weld that in. This one, unfortunately, the piece of panel isn't high enough to come up this far. This was where an original to the kick panel was spot welded in here. So we might use that to spot weld our kick panel in. We have to see how that is once we get to that point. If the kick panel comes up there, perfect. Clamp it, boom, weld it in. So, with all that said, it's no heat up here. So we can go ahead and spot weld here, spot weld here. Get this locked down. Get it secure. Clamp it, draw everything together, done. Then the final one, after it's a little warm. I can touch it, but it's still some heat. We're gonna weld this one solid. Then we'll be done welding the kick panel in as far as up here. Then we'll have to drill our spot welds and weld it to the bottom once we get our door on, and if we have to manipulate it just a hair. We'll see when that time comes. Then of course we'll clean off all this lead, and I mean it's pretty cool looking. Look at that. But you know, it was cool. If this is a rat rod, I would just leave it there, you know what I mean? Well, it is a rat rod, but it's not like rat rod, so. But yeah, we got to get all the lead off of it, get the panel, make sure everything is secure, because it is welded on. It's still hot. And I'm confident that's not coming off. It's not going to rattle loose. Get this sanded down, get it cleaned up, and then figure out what we're going to do as far as putting some sheet metal in between this gap and joining this together the best that we can, because there's metal under this. This is just all lead fill still. So we're going to sand all the lead fill out, get down to the metal, but then we're going to have to fix all that up, make it nice when it comes time. So let's get this final panel put on, and then we can get our door on and we can see if all this is going to pan out to be like we think it's going to be, which I think it's going to be, because we're doing pretty good. But we'll see. So with everything mocked up to the best that I think that it's going to get, and it looks pretty good. We're going to do some initial spot welds to hold the top of this cowling on before we put the hinges on and then do the door. I just want to check out a couple things, so I'm going to put a spot weld here, a spot weld here, and while those are cooling, go down just a hair and spot weld the bottom. So what I like to do when spot welding is a technique that I call thumb knuckle. And that's just simply from the top of my thumb to my knuckle on a large panel like this where you got a long run that you're going to be spot welding together. I use the thumb knuckle technique. It's just what I call it. But the top of your thumb to the knuckle, it'd be the spacing between each of the spot welds running down the length of this panel. And you simply put your thumb up there and then go to your knuckle and then just kind of eyeball it. You know, it doesn't have to be an exact science. I don't know. I guess you could break down the measurement of how long it is and then divide that by how many spot welds you're going to have, you know. But thumb knuckle, man. So that's the top of the thumb. There's my knuckle. There's the spot weld. Top of the thumb. There's my knuckle. There's the spot weld. Top of the thumb. There's my knuckle. There's the spot weld. So on and so forth till you get down. Or you could just eyeball it and space them out. I like to do it in that way because it kind of just binds everything together. It makes it rigid, but not rigid. You know what I mean? So I've got to stop here because we still might have to manipulate this by moving it back a little bit. And just because this is tight, it's still, we have movement at the bottom because the bottom is not fastened to the rocker yet, which we'll get to that. I want to put a spot weld here and here, lock this down, and then go through the whole process of putting the door back on and then seeing what we have as far as the gaps. And then that will lead us to be where we can say, okay, let's get the archway set up, bring in the fender, put it on as a mock-up just to see how it's going to lay against this with the door on. And then if everything checks out, we can go ahead, move forward, and get our kick panel in place and get it tacked in a few spots as well. So we got a lot of work to do, and I'm trying to do this as quick as possible as far as keeping it in a timely episode here for you guys. So right now, with the little heat radiating through the panel, we're going to just kind of form it, kind of smooth it down like a sticker. You know how you start at the top and do it, or better yet, the screen protector on your cell phone. You lay it down, you see that little bubble go up, and you use the squeegee type thing to smooth it out. Well, that's what we're going to do here. We got the bottom of the cowling clamped down here to the lower A pillar. And before I lose too much of the heat, I just like to take the backside of the punch and baby sledge, baby Thor, and lightly go down the seam right here where we're going to be continuing our spot welds on down the A pillar. And the reason for that is to just make sure that it's stretching, conforming the way we want it. That's just a theory that I have. I don't know if that actually works, but metal moves when it's hot, when it's warm. This is not extremely hot. Like, I can touch it. I can lay the backside of my hand on it, so it's not hot, it's warm. But I just want to conform everything because I want this to be a nice, tight fit. And then, after we are satisfied with where it's at, once we get the door on here, we'll take the body hammer and just round over the edges, just like what would be on the old school truck. So we're making pretty good progress here. All right, so our spot welds have cooled down. They're looking good. And like I mentioned earlier, you're just going to have a little bit of the heat bubbling the paint. That's nothing. This is just a light coat. We can knock that down and then hit it again when it's time. But the point of it is that these little jams here are painted. Now, yeah, there's a little burn right there, and that's fine. We're going to get in there and clean it up. What I discovered, though, that's nothing. What I discovered is our archway. Now, you would want the archway, this part, the end, being at the end of the cowling here. Well, you can see, obviously, that is not the case. There's one or two things that's happened here. One, we could have went up maybe another 1/4 of an inch with our panel. Maybe another 1/4 of an inch. Or two, we have things drawn a little too tight. But here's the thing. Look at this. Come in here and you look at how the cowling is in there. And this is how it's supposed to go. So you have the ridge here, this bead roll. And this should be maybe just right up there with it. And that's nothing. That's just a little bit of space. But then it follows down the rest of the way true like it's supposed to do. The only thing that I can think is that maybe we have something a little off, or it could be the panel. You never know. It's aftermarket shit. But I had a slight issue with one of the other ADs I built. It wasn't as bad as this. So the gapping that's here, that's not really a big deal, because once you bolt this in, that's going to bolt down. That's going to bolt down. We can do some things to alleviate this gap. We can get in here. We can move this inner piece of the the archway. We can move that outward. It's welded, but we can move, it's welded solid to the framing. We can move that out a little bit if we need to. But once we put the fender on there, you collapse the bolt, everything's going to be fine all the way down. And what I've been doing is putting my clamps on there and tightening things down to see if anything pops out. And none of that is happening. So here's what I'm going to do. This is exactly what I'm going to do. Once I get the door on there and we get it mocked up and check our gap on that side over there, I'm just going to put the cutting wheel on here and be like, cut that shit off of there, I mean, whatever. And then we'll be back to like we're supposed to be. Because as far as I'm concerned, you know, once the door goes back on and all the gaps line up, which I believe they will. I don't think I'm going to have to do any manipulating with none of this. Everything's clamped up still down here at the bottom. That way if I have to shift it a little bit, I still can, because there's still a little bit of movability with that. Up top, we're done. You ain't moving nothing up there unless you go ahead and go back and cut all this shit out, which that ain't happening. So this little piece sticking out here, it's not a big deal to me. I will take that and just whack it right off, get it flushed up with the piece here, because when the truck's done, there's a cover, and I have it. They sell it, you know, it goes here and it goes over. It covers this hole. You know, I'll probably just make something, customize it, and just make it a little better than what they give you. But anyway, I think that's what my plan is, and I think that's the best suitable idea, because if I get the door on and all this lines up and the gaps right here are looking good, just like it was when we had the door mopped up without the cowling, well then there's no reason to go back and start changing shit. There is no reason at all. So the fender, like it, you know, the cowl is designed to be like this, and we're gonna put the fender on and see how it butts up, because everything is relative to, you know, the front of the truck, the fenders, the inner fenders, the grill, the hood, so on and so forth, are all playing off the front of this truck. So we definitely want things to be right. But like I said, I put my doors on and the gaps look good all the way up. You know, there might be a small issue right here, because there's, you know, right there might be a small issue. But like I said, we're gonna take a piece of sheet, we're gonna lay that sheet and go a little bit in there. But we'll just lay the sheet metal there and go across. Let me see if I can find a little piece. Oh, here we go. Here's a little piece of sheet. So we'll do something like that. You know what I mean? Joining this little divot with the real steel that's underneath this lead fill. And then we'll have less Bondo to fill outward with. I'm not into all that, man. So if we get something and we can do it like that and make it more streamlined across all the way, and then fill what we have to, because we are going to have to do some filler here, because once we get all this lead out of here, it's going to be a lot lower. You see the panel, that's lead fill, lead fill. So that's a deep crevice. But we're going to go here and weld us a piece of metal in to bring that up instead of using filler to do it. We'll get to that later on down the road. But right now we're talking about archways. I think we're in good shape. I'm going to put the door on. I'm going to mock it up. And if it looks good, we're whacking the end of that. That's for sure. So the clamps are representing the mounting points where the fender will mount. And when you look at it, there is one spot right here. Just that little bit of a gap that's there, which is no big deal. We can get this moved out to that. We could even drill a hole through here and clamp this and spot weld it to keep it tight. Okay, then the same thing goes for up here. Now, that's still with this little piece hanging out. Bottom line, all this clamping and everything, nothing much at all. I say nothing much. Nothing has changed. We still have where the door is going to line up and all that. We have the fender, the cowl coming out right here, mating to the bottom side of that. And everything looks good. The archway is still in there where it's supposed to be. So this is what I'm gonna do. We can tap this back. And what that does is it's gonna push it back, bring the bottom to us a little bit, just to kind of get it a little more in place. But then whatever's left, we're whacking. That's just how it's going to go. But first, I'm going to continue with doing my quote-unquote body work and just try to get this back just a little bit. We're not going to get crazy because we're not trying to put too much pressure on this. We don't want to mess with this at all. But we're going to get it back just a hair more, see what we got going on. And then whatever's left, the excess, we're just going to whack it off. Satisfied with the placement of the archway, it's now time to secure it to the rocker. We're going to be going on the inside and welding the top of the rocker to the top lip of the archway, and that will keep it secure and in the proper mounting position. So here we are. It's been beat back. We have not cut yet, and you can see, you know, that's still the original piece. So gently tapping it back up in here has gained us what we were trying to achieve. So we're only out. That ain't even, man, that ain't a quarter. So it's going to be simple. We're going to get the cutting wheel and we're just going to follow it. And then we'll get the grinder and we'll grind this back to where it's flush with the panel here. And then we'll be able to join these, but we're not going to do that till later. First, we're going to get the inside kick panel in, and then we'll worry about doing that. But this has set us up for putting on our door and getting the kick panel installed. And once we get the door on, then we will have to come down here and follow up with welding these two pieces together. I'm going to drill 2 holes up here, 2 holes down here, spot weld the panel together. The archway, that's the archway, this is the rocker, and then I'll run a baby seam right here and right here. I'm not too pleased with the hole that's in there. That hole is from where my finger is. Sorry about the light leaks. We got our high powered light on the inside of the truck. But I think I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm not going to put a rubber grommet or nothing in there. I'm going to just take a piece of metal, make it cut over, and just weld it on there. This is, you know, we've done enough today. We don't have to get crazy. I might even just weld it on the inside, you know, but we're going to do something to block that out because we don't want any debris and stuff just sitting here in the pocket collecting behind the fender. And then we're going to go ahead and put our primer and our rubberized coating in there as well. So, all right, here it is, guys. The moment of truth. We're going to be putting the door on. I just got the hinges installed to the truck, and before we can finish spot welding the lower section of our cowling to the A-pillar, I want to get the door on here and make sure that the gaps are going to line up the way that I believe they should. Up here, I'm confident that everything's going to be fine because we're working off of this area here and everything is flowing that way. We left the bottom of the cowl loose so that we can nudge it back or move it forward if the case needs be. I'm gonna get the door up here, check it out, and with a little luck, all you have to do is pull the door back off, clamp everything down, weld it up, and we'll be good to go. We can start making preparations to install the LS Fabrication inner kick panel. With the door just mounted on, and as I said, once the screws are drawn down in the hinge, that'll pull it, you know, closer to it. But that's our gapping. That's what we're looking like as far as the door being on. There's a little bit of a protrusion here, which to me is not that great of a deal. Not a big deal at all. Not to me. Once you suck this in, it's going to draw it in, and you could manipulate. You could, you know, get this, if you wanted to, do a little bit of heating and then gradually just tapping it down, but I wouldn't worry about all that because once you put the bolt on, it's gonna suck it down, and then we'll see what we can do. We might pop this loose and bring it back just a hair to line up with that, but then I got to keep in mind these aren't the doors that's going on it, so I might want to go get the doors that we are going to put on it. But at any rate, we're looking good. We're looking pretty good. That's the back, and here we are again up here at the front. I'm happy with that, and I'm happy with the little bit that it's out. I mean, that's nothing. But again, you have to keep in mind that the door is going to be pulled in once you draw the bolts down on the hinges, and then to alleviate this, we got a little bit of tilt. You know, you can slide the hinge just a little bit inward, so that would bring this down, but then it would affect the top. So it's a tricky game playing with doors. But I think we got it, man. I think we're doing good, and that's going to lead us into our next episode for sure. We're going to come back, and starting off in the next episode, we're going to introduce the LS Fabrication kick panel into the equation, and we're going to get that installed. Now that I'm satisfied with everything we got, we're going to go ahead and start spot welding and bringing all this stuff tight together. I had to get in there with the baby sledge and kind of knock this out a little bit to bring it closer to it, and it's all secured. And then we got some spot welds to do down here at the bottom as well. So it's gonna be dope. We got it. I'm happy with what we have here. I'm not concerned with the little bit of offness. That ain't nothing, man, because this is sort of a rat rod. So yeah, before I get out here, once again, big shout out to LS Fabrication, Joe's Racing Products, and Champion Cooling Systems. I enjoyed doing this. I hope you guys enjoy these episodes. And I'd like to remind you also to go check out my podcast, streaming on Apple and streaming on the Podbean app. For those of you who do not have Apple phones, you can get to the Podbean app, and then you just type in patinacode, and then the title, Patinacode Presents Stays With Me, will pop up, and you can listen to the podcast that we have there available. Also, check out my store. You can go to Google, type in patinacodellc.ecwit.com. It'll pull up my store site, get you some apparel, get you a shirt or two, get you one for your woman too. We got some for the ladies also. I really do appreciate it, guys. I'll be back with you on another episode, and we're going to go from there, man. We got some big things coming up. We're getting closer. We're getting closer to, well, we're actually getting pretty close to, pretty much completion. Once we get all the sheet metal stuff put in, then we got to, sand everything down, paint. So we got at least another 6 months of episodes to come out, man. I hope you guys can bear with me for that long. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Stay with me.